Good morning. Welcome to worship. Stand together. Know this morning. God is here, and He's here for you. Let's worship.
Oh, shame is a prison as cruel as a grave. Shame is a robber, and he's come to take my name. Oh, love is my redeemer, lifting me up from the ground. Love is a power where my freedom soul is found. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. When I hear that trumpet sound, I'm gonna rise up out of the ground. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Oh,
Oh, fear is a liar with a smooth and velvet tongue. Fear is a tyrant, he's always telling me to run. Oh, love is a resurrection, and love is a trumpet sound. Oh, love is my weapon, I'm gonna take my giants down. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. When I hear that trumpet sound, I'm gonna rise up out of the ground. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Whoa.
Oh, there was a battle, a war between death and life. And there on the tree, the Lamb of God was crucified. And he went on down to hell. He took back every key. He rose up as a lion, and he set all captives free. He's alive, 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 hallelujah, alive. Praise and glory to the Lamb. Alive, 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 hallelujah, alive, forever, amen. Jesus, He is alive, alive, hallelujah, alive. Praise and glory to the Lamb. Alive, 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 hallelujah, alive, forever, amen.
Worthy is the Lamb, worthy of our praise. Worthy is the one who has overcome the grave. Let the people dance, let the people sing. Worthy is the mighty King. Worthy
worthy of our praise. Worthy is the one who has overcome the grave. Let the people dance, let the people sing. Worthy is the mighty King. Worthy is the Lamb, worthy of our praise. Worthy is the one who has overcome the grave. Let the people dance, let the people sing. Worthy is the mighty King. Worthy is the Lamb, worthy of our praise. Worthy is the one who has overcome the grave. Let the people dance, let the people sing. Worthy is the mighty King. If you walked out of the grave, I'll walk into you. If you walked out of the grave, I'm walking too. If you walked out of the grave, I'm walking too. If you walked out of the grave, I'm walking too. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. When I hear that trumpet sound, I'm gonna rise up out of the ground. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Oh, there ain't no grave gonna hold my body
Glory to God. Amen. All power is available to us, the same power that raised Christ from the dead. God is here this morning. He's everything you need. Everything you need.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you.
Sing it with us.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every life. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, meeting every need. I worship you. I worship
I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working.
His promises are true. His word never fails.
Morning. Hey, we are in our series, Great Questions and Honest Answers. Great questions and actually, we're going to wrap up this series today. Not that there's no more questions. There's always going to be questions, right? But we're going to move on to some new territory next week as we study through the book of Ephesians. And that may sound boring to you. I guarantee you Ephesians is not boring. It's an awesome little book in the New Testament that really just, man, lets us know who we are in Jesus and what we've got. And I think sometimes we just don't know what we've got. And Ephesians is there to let us know. So I'm excited as we next week begin to study through the book of Ephesians together. But this week we're in the series, Great Questions and Honest Answers. Worship's awesome this morning, wasn't it? Woo! That's a way to start the week right there. Give God glory. Come on. You know, and if that wasn't enough, I feel like today was enough of like little rocket fuel this morning to get us going. But we're going to come out in the front yard on Wednesday, and we're going to worship God again with the neighborhood, right? And so this Wednesday at 7 o'clock, man, I'm excited. It's just that kind of year, this time of year, it feels good to kind of have a sweatshirt on. And we're going to be out there in the front yard. And so bring your lawn chair, your blankets, kids, everybody, the whole family. We'll still have some rows there if you want to stay in the cars. But we're going to be right out front. The praise team's going to be right out front, and the band right out in front of the church. And we're just going to worship, right? It's probably going to get a little loud, and so the neighbors might hear us, but we were getting stories over in the park that neighbors kind of liked, and they were sitting out in their front porch and listening. So I think they're going to be okay with that. And so that's this Wednesday at 7 o'clock right out in the front yard. Well, here we are in this series, and we're coming to an end here. Great questions, honest answers. And today we're going to ask the question, how do I deal with disappointment? How do I deal with disappointment? Now, I got to say that I've had to face disappointment this weekend. And I had to face disappointment this week because we had the golf scramble on Friday. And I'm not disappointed that I lost. I'm disappointed that I felt so old that I couldn't even play, right? That's what makes me disappointed, because I knew on Saturday I was going to be playing pickleball. And I felt like my body's I got one day in me, maybe, right? Because I've been having knees and like bone spurs, and I got all kinds of excuses, but I was like, all right, I'm going to go out there and just help with the golf scramble. Thank you. I see some golfers in the room for coming out and being a part of that. What a great day that was for our missions team, and thank you for being a part of that. But I was like, I'm going to save everything I got for Saturday. I'm going to show up on Saturday. Now, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I'm going to dominate, right? That's what I'm saying. Now, what I'm saying is I'll play. We'll see how it goes. You know, we'll have a good time, right? There's a lot of good competitors, but I'm thinking in the back of my head, no, I'm going to dominate. So I'm going to play. I see some pickleball. Y'all laughing at me because that's my attitude, right? I showed up there. There was some really good players there. There's some really good players there. There's some good players around here. I won some games, right? That's something, right? But I lost more games than I won, and eventually I lost enough that they just let me leave, right? Because it was over, right? And so that's the way it goes. And so I'm a little disappointed in my body that I can't do what I thought I could do, or probably never could do, but I'm going to keep on practicing, and I'll try it again next year. I think I've gotten better. I just got to get a whole lot better, so I'll keep on working on it. But, there's disappointment in life. I think that's why this is a great question, because if you live long enough in life, you're going to have to face disappointment. Now, disappointment comes in all shapes and sizes, right? There's little disappointment, there's big disappointment. There's disappointment that just train wrecks your life. Your world is just wrecked. And so today, again, like we've said many times, it's not about comparing hurt or disappointment, but the question we're trying to ask is how do you deal with it? When you're disappointed in life, things don't go the way that you planned, right? Sometimes things just don't go how you thought they were going to go. Sometimes you make some plans, you have some dreams, and then you wake up and you got to face reality, right? And it's not even close to the dream. And so sometimes life just hands you some disappointments. And how do you deal with that? And to try to answer that question today, we're going to go in the Old Testament to the book of Ruth. And we're going to start in Ruth chapter 1. So turn there in your Bibles to Ruth chapter 1, or the notes are there on the app, or a lot of the verses they'll throw up on the screen. Ruth is just a little book tucked there in the Old Testament, but I believe it has so much to teach us about life and how to handle disappointment. Let's just read the first 5 verses together, and then we'll slow down and take it verse by verse. Ruth chapter 1, verse 1. In those days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judea, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech, his wife's name was Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judea, and they went to Moab and lived there. Verse 3. Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other Ruth. And after they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. We read through those verses awful fast, but there's an awful lot of hurt and disappointment that happens there in just a few verses. Let's just take it the first part there. Ruth chapter 1, the first part of verse 1. It says, "In those days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land." They lived at a time when it was just a disappointing time to live. It was just a hard time to be a human on planet Earth, especially here. And we know that because it says, "In those days when the judges ruled." Now, we know something about that point in history, right? Because we had the book of Judges, right? And just shake your head, right? It's in there. It's in there, right? Just look in your table of content. We had the book of Judges, and we've studied the book of Judges before. It's not a great time to be a human. This wasn't a great place to be alive on planet Earth during this time. And we know that because the book of Judges is a historical book that tells us what happened in history. Remember, the Bible is not a made-up book of fairy tales, but of real places, of real people. And the book of Judges, it lets us know that the book of Judges ends with saying every man did what was right in their own eyes. That is not a place, that is not a country, that is not where you want to be anywhere close to, where everybody's just doing whatever they think is right. Because I do what I think is right, you do what you think is right, there's going to be some clashing, right? There's going to be some heads butting. There's going to be some things that break when everybody just says, I'm going to do whatever I want to do and I don't care what you think about it. When there is no sense of right and wrong, that this is good and this is bad, when everybody's just making it up, that is not a place that you want to be a part of. And yet this is where our story is set. It's during this time that the judges ruled. It's a very relativistic time. People are rebelling against God. They have no place for God. And so they've kicked God out, and they're just doing life their way. That's the backdrop of this story. It's a very disappointing time to live. Do you guys get that? That there's points in human history that are just disappointing, that's just harder than other points. There's some places on this spinning globe that's harder to live than other places, right? You get that? And if you don't get that, you just haven't traveled or been anywhere else. This is one of those hard places. This is a difficult place to live. It's when the judges ruled. Then it goes on, it says, there was famine in the land. Now, we don't really get that too much in our day because we just go through the drive-thru and we order our food, and magically they pop the hand out the window in a bag, right? And we can eat it in the car literally while we're driving to the next place. How cool is that? That's awesome. You don't even got to do dishes. You literally throw the dishes away, and next time when you go through the drive-thru, they give you new dishes. Isn't that awesome? You don't even need a dishwasher. That's how cool that we've got it right now. Man, you go to the store, and it's there on the shelves, and we experienced a little bit of that, earlier this year, and we started all freaking out, right? What am I going to do? It's not there. But this is a time right here, there's a famine in the land, and that means that everything is hard. This is a disappointing time to live because just everything is harder. Everything is more difficult. When you're literally trying to figure out where am I going to get my next meal from, how am I going to feed myself, everything is harder. Nothing is easy. Everything just takes more work. And because you don't have enough of anything that you need. That's what's the happening here. And so it's just a disappointing place to live. It's a disappointing time to live. And look, it goes on in the second part of verse 1. It says, So a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. Now, it's one thing to get to move, right? Like, hey, it's an adventure. We're going to move, right? New place. But it's another thing that when you have to move. But I would just say moving in general is hard, right? They say it's one of the most stressful things you can ever do in life is move. Whether that's across town or to a new city or new state, they're moving here to a new country. So it's a new culture. Nothing's familiar to them. I know when we came here, and we've been here going on 17 years now, and I feel like this is home to me now. My kids grown up here. My kids have played literally every sport. We've spent hours down on the T-ball, the Little League field. We've been in just about every concession stand there is, selling hot dogs and nachos. I'm an expert at making popcorn now if you need that in your concessions, because my kids now are getting out of that stage. so I can loop back around, not because I have to, just because I want to, right? Pop popcorn. So if you need somebody, I'm ready to tap in there for you. But this feels like home to me because my kids have grown up here. I've got one in college now. I've got a junior. I've got one that's a freshman. And so but even that, I still find myself, especially out in the county, I'll be going down a road, making a turn, lose signal, right? And all of a sudden, like, well, I didn't know this road was here, and it connects to this road. That's cool. I've got a new shortcut. But those of you that live here, that grew up here, you know all the shortcuts, right? You know the ins. How many of you, this is home for you, like this area, right? How many of this is kind of your place? There's a lot of you guys. That's awesome. That is so cool. And that's a blessing. That's a good thing that you see people in the store, you're like, hey, we went to second grade together. Y'all just known each other. But when you move to a new place, especially at first, you kind of feel like an outsider. You just feel like you don't fit in. And again, I don't feel that way anymore, but I know when we first came here, that's just natural. That's the way you feel. For Missy, this was the first place she'd ever moved away from. So when we came here from Middletown, and she grew up there, she was leaving her mom and dad, right? We used to go over there once a week and have dinner. We show up more often because they had an in-ground pool, and all of that was awesome. So it was like a vacation. Go over there and get to swim. How cool is that? Her sister lived there in town, and her two nephews, and we got to hang out and do stuff with them. But we moved here, now all that's happening on a phone, right? And so it's just different, I guess is what I'm saying. And so this is disappointing for them. It's because it's not like they chose to live. It's not like, hey, let's just grab out a map and pick the most coolest place to live. No, because there was a famine in the land, they had to move, and they had to move to a place that was very uncomfortable and uneasy for them. Everything was just a little bit strange, a little bit different. And again, you may not get that if you've never lived anywhere else, but some of you in the room know exactly what I'm talking about, that when you have to go to a new place, it's just a little bit harder. And so that's what's happening from them as they move to this new country. Look at verse 3 again. It says, now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, he dies, and she was left with her two sons. There's all kinds of loss, we said, but I can't think of, it's hard to think of something more devastating than the loss of a spouse. Man, to lose somebody that you do life with, that you laugh with, right? To lose someone that knows you better than you know yourself, right? To lose somebody that just does stuff you didn't even know they did, right? They just did stuff, and you didn't even realize it until they were gone, and you're trying to figure out, how in the world, did they do that? What do I do? How do I pay this bill? Or where's this thing at? And it just feels odd. I know when my grandma died, my grandpa, I don't know if he ever got over it. I just feel like every conversation we ever had came back around to talking to about my grandma and how much he loved her and how much he missed her. And he would go back and talk about their first date and how he met her at church, and she was singing up on the stage, and he was really trying to figure out a way to get to talk to her afterwards. And back then, I feel like all the churches had these big, gigantic steps out the front door, and so he waited on the steps and was hoping she'd pass by and all those kind of things. And it worked out, obviously, because I'm here, but he saw her there. But when she died, that was just, hard for him, because not only did they, do life together, they worked together. They were farmers in the truest sense of the word. My grandma got up there and drove the tractor when my grandpa, and with some others would throw the hay on there. She did all that work with him. They did life together. And so when that was gone, it's like he never really came back from that. It was just so hard. And here we see it in a story that she loses her husband, and how scared. Sometimes we read through these verses as like, of course, yeah, her husband dies, and this happens, and this happens. No, Naomi was a real person, and she was really scared. She's not in her home. She's in a foreign country with her sons, and she's got to figure it out. Now, there's something about having kids, and there's something that's good about it is they force you got to figure it out and go on, right? You got to make it happen. And that's what she does. Even though she's scared, I'm sure she's hurting. It's hard. She's got these boys, and so she says, I got to keep on going. I got to figure it out for them. And look at verse 4. It says they do figure it out. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other Ruth, and after they lived there about 10 years. So think about that Naomi, not that she gets over it, you don't get over something like that, but she finds a way to go on. She finds a way to be there for her boys, and they got a good run of it For 10 years, for a decade, there's joy in the house. There's life again, right? They found somebody that they love and that she's able to do life with them. But then here it comes again. And I don't know why disappointment does this, but it'd be one thing if we're just disappointed in little bitty doses. But I feel like disappointment, at least in my life, the way it's usually come, it doesn't play fair. Disappointment piles on. And when you're overwhelmed, when you ain't got nothing left, it just gives you another dose. And that's what happens here with Naomi. It says, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. She's lost everybody. I said there a moment ago that, losing your spouse, is there anything more devastating? Well, there is. And that's losing a child. It's one thing, to lose a spouse, and it's hard, really, really hard. But it's coming. It's coming from day one. Think about it. When you get married, you stand before the pastor, your family, your friends. Even from the very first day of your marriage, it's coming to an end at some point. When you make those promises, when you make those vows, you say for better, for worse, in sickness and in health, for richer, for till death parts us, right? And we know this isn't going to be forever. At some point, that's the deal. We at some point, life comes to the end. So you enjoy every moment with your spouse, every hug. You reach down every chance you can and you grab their hand because you don't know how much more days you got with them. Every conversation is just really good. You lean in because when you're married, you kind of know at some point that's not going to be there. But when it comes to a child, nobody, no parent ever thinks that they're going to have to bury a child. No parent should ever have to bury a child. There's no preparation for that. There's no way to get ready for that. There's no way to ease that hurt, to ease that burden. There's no words that can be said. It's hard. It's crushing. It's devastating. And here we have a mom who loses both her boys. She loses them both. And that's what she's faced with now. Today's question is, how do I deal with disappointment? When tragedy comes, you feel a lot of things. You feel anger, fear, depression. You feel guilt, anxiety, worry. But we got to be careful because some people don't deal with it. Some people, when they're disappointed in life, instead of dealing with it, they just stuff it down and just go on. And I'm telling you, that's not the way to deal with it. Because if you somehow miraculously find a way to just stuff it down, it's still there. It's still there if you don't allow yourself to grieve, if you don't allow yourself to hurt. And here we have a lady that's lost her husband. She's living in a foreign land. She's lost both her boys, her children. And just pretending like it hadn't happened is not going to fix it. Just when somebody come up to her and say, "Hey, Naomi, how's it doing?" "Hey, I'm doing okay." That doesn't make it okay just because you say it's okay. And so I don't know where we got it, but for somewhere along the line, especially if you're a Christian and been at church for a while, you just somehow, nobody tells you, but you just pick up, you feel like it's the deal that you're supposed to be okay all the time. No, you're not. Somewhere along the lines, we pick this up that we're supposed to be happy and smiling all the time. No, you're not. Some things are hard. Some things just hurt. Some stuff makes you angry. Last week we talked about unrighteous anger, but there's a righteous anger that just says, "I hate what I'm going through right now. This is terrible what I'm feeling right now." And it's crazy to think we can just pretend like we're not hurt, we're not disappointed. You look at the Psalms, as you read through the book of Psalms over and over, what's David doing? David's pouring out his heart to God and saying, "God, I'm angry with you. I don't like what I'm going through. God, how long am I going to have to go through this? God, make it stop. God, get them. God, help me." Right? He just is pouring his heart out to God. Over in Psalm 62, verse 8, it says, "Pour out your heart, for God is our refuge." Think about Jesus Christ. Jesus didn't tell us to stuff it in and pretend and just paint a fake smile on our face. But over on the Sermon on the Mount, in Matthew chapter 5, verse 4, it says, "God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted." We're not supposed to pretend. The Christian life is not about pretending. It's about being real. And when we're disappointed, when we're hurting, we got to allow ourselves time to grieve, time to mourn, time to be angry, time to cry, time to weep. And it takes time. How much time does it take? It takes as long as it takes, right? It takes as long as it takes. But it's not about pretending. Look at verse 6. It says, when Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them, she and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. With her 2 daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on that road that would take them back to the land of Judah. Verse 8, then Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness, as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband. Then she kissed them goodbye, and they wept aloud and said to her, we will go back with you to your people. But Naomi said, return to home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I'm too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters. It's more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me. At this they wept aloud again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. Look there in verse 6. It says, when Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people for providing food for them, she prepared to go home. You know, when you face disappointment in life, it has a way of just your schedule, your everything, it just goes out the window. You just feel paralyzed, broken, you don't know what to do. Now, when it comes to death, you know, people, they do what they can do. There's a service, there's a funeral service. People bring food over to the house, and they maybe send a card and give a couple calls. But this world keeps on spinning, right? And so it's not that anyone's bad or anyone's at fault, but just the world keeps on going, and your world's got to keep on going. And as much as you might want to just get in a room somewhere and never come out again, you can do that for a while, but you can't do that forever, right? The world keeps on going, and you got to figure out ways to make it work. And that's what we see Naomi doing here. It's not that she's calloused or cold, but she's just realizing they got to come up with a game plan here. You know, what are we going to do? And the best she can come up with is girls, I'm too old, you know. Go back home. You're young. You can find another. Go back to your family, what you know. Get back to what's familiar to me. I'm going to go home. I've heard there's food now. The famine's over. And I would just say to you, you can have hope and still be hurting at the same time. That's okay. I feel like sometimes we feel like those two things are mutually exclusive. They're not. You can have hope that there's somehow, some way you're going to figure this out and still be hurting like crazy at the very same time. You can trust God and not have it all figured out. It's okay to not have it all figured out. In fact, I would say you quit trying to figure it all out. You're not going to figure it all out. When you're disappointed, when you're hurting, things get crazy. They get confusing. They get cloudy, because everything you thought was going to happen, it don't happen that way. So you don't even trust yourself to make plans anymore. You second guess and you doubt everything. But you can still trust God and say, God, I'm going to start taking steps. And again, that doesn't mean you got it all figured out. She decides to go back home because there's some food back there again. And her plan is, daughters, you know, you go back to your people. But here you see Ruth. And I love Ruth. And the book's named Ruth, right? Ruth, she clings to Naomi. And she grabs on. She says, wherever you go, I'm going with you. I'm with you to the end. Wherever this ride takes us, I'm there with you. Don't you love people that can't take a hint? Don't you love those people in your life that just don't get it when you say you're okay, and they look back at you and say, no, you're not? You don't need to come over. I'm coming over. I'll be there in a few minutes. If you don't open the door, I'm just going to sit on your front porch. Right? Don't you love those people that just sit down with you? They just hug you, right? And you say, you don't have to hug me. And they just grab on, right? They cry with you. They bring food over, chicken, right? Chicken's always good, or a casserole is always helpful, you know, when you're hurting. Aren't you grateful for those people? Praise God that you got some people in your life that just don't get when you say you don't need any help, because they help you anyway, because you need it, right? How do you deal with disappointment? Well, you don't deal with it by yourself. You don't deal with it by yourself. If it's little or big, you need help. You need somebody in your corner. And I would say let some people in. They want to help you. Now, they don't know what to say, because what is there to say? They don't even know really what to do. That's why they just bring food. They just feel like food helps everything, right? But let them help you. You're not putting them out. They've got time. They want to be there for you. And it's I don't know why, but it just helps having people with you. And I'm talking over the long haul, not just for a day, a week. I can remember times in my life when I've been disappointed for years. You ever been disappointed for years? Have a couple bad years? And I can remember during those years, I had some people that listened to me, and I don't know if they wanted to or they were just stuck with me because we were co-workers. Like, I got to go to work, right? But in the break room, man, I poured my heart out to those guys, right? Because I was just brokenhearted, right? Needed somebody to talk to. Sometimes you just need some people that'll just listen to you. You know there's no answers, but it just helps to get it out of your head and just get it out there. You know, it keeps you from exploding, and somehow it helps. And Ruth did that for Naomi. She says, I ain't leaving you. I'm with you to the end. Wherever this thing goes, I'm by your side. And that's what she did. So Orpah goes back to her people. Naomi and Ruth, they travel back to Bethlehem. They travel back to Judah. And I put the notes there for you. I'm not going to read through all these verses. I want you to study it this week. But something happens when they go back that's unexpected. Now, the part that's expected is they got to figure stuff out, right? They got to figure some stuff out. And in that day, how they kind of took care of people is they expected people to work, but they kind of helped them with that. And so it was a farming community, and it was during the barley harvest time. And so they would leave the edges of the field and not glean right out to the very edges, but they would on purpose, they would go down through the middle, but they would leave some of the edges so the people that was poor, the widows, they could come alongside and they could take some of that so they could get some money so that they could have some food. So again, Naomi is older, but Ruth steps in and says, I've got it, I'll go to work. She goes out there on those edges of the field and she begins to make an income for them so they can have a place to live, they can have food. They start, again, they don't have it all figured out, but they're going through it. They're going through it. But Boaz catches, Naomi's eye. Naomi sees him, and there's a little spark there that like, man, you're kind of good looking. And Boaz kind of sees, oh, she's kind of good looking too. And it's a small town. Bethlehem is not like it's a big city. It's a small town. And so they kind of know that like the deal and the tragedy. So he kind of holds back. It's not the right time, right? He's like, it's not the right season, for this. But Naomi, she's older, right? She's looking at the clock here saying, girl, you got to speed this thing up a little bit. And so she tries to help, Ruth a little bit with the situation. And so she's a little more bolder than even in that culture that you would have thought, they would have been. But she flat out asked him to marry her, so she like puts it out there. Now something again, and again, there's so much, and I'm getting in the weeds of all the story. You don't care about it. But because she was married to Naomi's, sons, she's got some land. There's like some family land. There's like a property thing in there. And there's this idea back there they have of the kinsman redeemer, that if there was a close kinsfolk member, somebody in your family, that they would step in and they would marry, and so they would be there, and that's how you would, get provided for as well. But also they would get the land. Well, Boaz wasn't the closest redeemer, but he really liked Naomi. Naomi really liked him. But Boaz did the right thing and goes to the court of their day, to the gates of the city where the guys decided stuff, and said, hey, I'll put up the tab, I'll pay, I'll redeem, I'll buy back. You have the land. I just want the girl kind of thing. And so they work all that stuff out, which is incredible, and you should go there and read all about it. But the bottom line, look at Ruth chapter 4, verse 13. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. In Ruth chapter 4, verse 13, when he made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. Verse 14, the woman said to Naomi, praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age, for your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth. Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The women living there said, Naomi has a son, and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. This story, think about it, it started off with a famine in the land, and where is it ending at? It's ending with a feast, right? This book started off with a funeral, right? But now it's ending with a marriage. This book started off with them having to move and be scared and afraid. The book ends with joy and celebration, and they're praising God. This book starts with loss, and now it's ending with the addition of this blessed child that comes their way. This book starts off and everybody's wondering, where in the world's God at? Is God anywhere? Has God just abandoned us? Till it ends with them praising God, and not only just praising God, but seeing that God was always at work. It says he named him Obed, the father of Jesse, the father of David. And if we go over to Matthew chapter 1 and look at the genealogy of Jesus, who shows up there? This story right here, Obed, shows up right there. Now, does that mean that God caused all this stuff to happen? I don't think so. I believe we live in a broken world, a sinful world, a fallen world, and there's some stuff I'm not giving God credit for because it's just evil, right? It's just evil, it's terrible, it's bad. But I know this, that God's bigger than the evil. God's so much bigger than our worst days. And somehow that God can take our hurts and our disappointments, and if we give them to Him, He can keep on working like we sang about today, and He can bring about a plan that we could have never imagined. I know some of you in this room are dealing with disappointment. I just want to tell you, the story doesn't have to end right here. I know you may feel like you're never going to be happy again. You know, I think sometimes we are too hard on ourselves. We don't think we should be happy. We feel like somehow, especially when it comes to the loss of a loved one, somehow we're letting that person down if we're happy again. You're not letting that person down. You're alive. They would want you to be happy. They would want you to have joy again. I think sometimes we feel like we're dishonoring their memory if we're not crying all the time, if we ever let ourselves laugh again. You're alive. They would want you to laugh again. You're not dishonoring their memory. You're not dishonoring the loss if you keep on living. And here you see Naomi and Ruth. They come to a place with this new baby that they're happy again. And that's okay, that God is working in their life. With heads bowed and eyes closed, I want to pray for those who are disappointed today. For those of you who have suffered a loss, the loss of a relationship, the loss of a child, the loss of a spouse, loss of a job, the loss of your health, I want to pray for you today. I don't want you to give up. I want you to let people help you. I want you to quit pretending and faking it. I want you to be real. And if you're hurting, say you're hurting. If you feel like crying, cry. If you're mad at God, go out in the yard and scream up at the air. God can take it. Father God, we bow before you. Wildwood family, it's been so good to be together with you this morning. Thank you so much for joining in this morning and being a part of it. I love starting off the week every Sunday together with the church, my brothers and sisters in Christ, knowing that I'm not alone, that we're together. God is with us. God is for us. And whatever we face this week, we don't face it alone. I want to encourage you and just say thank you for the way that you financially support the church, and however you do that, you know, there's several ways to give that are safe and secure, but it's making a difference. It's letting us be able to meet needs. It's been able to let us to start ministries and to do things that we've never been able to do before. And I just want to say thank you for the way that you're supporting the church. The world now needs more than ever that the church to be a lighthouse in this world, pointing people to Jesus Christ. That's our mission, right? Wildwood exists to love and lead people into a life-giving relationship with Jesus Christ. And so I just want to say thank you for supporting and giving to the church financially. Church family, I'm praying for you. I will see you soon.